At Five Star Bank, community is at the heart of what we do. Every day we strive to have thoughtful solutions for our customers and help our communities prosper. Honest dialogue about the issues affecting the region is vitally important to that prosperity. We are proud to be part of the conversation and hope you'll join in.
Jim McGrann is the president of VSP Vision Care, the core business of VSP Global. VSP is one of Sacramento's largest employers and is the largest eye care insurer in the world. Today, Mr. McGrann joins us on Studio Sacramento to talk about one of Sacramento's largest but least known companies, healthcare reform, and his thoughts on California's economic competitiveness in the global marketplace. Welcome, Jim McGrann.
Thanks so much, Scott. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you today.
Well, Jim, what many of us want to know is, why is VSP so well known around the country, but a lot less known here in its own hometown?
Right. I think what it is I think there's a perception of what VSP is. A lot of people, if you ask them on the streets of Sacramento, they'll know VSP with our 2,000 employees, but it'll be, oh, it's a big insurance company or it's an eye care company. But really what VSP Global is VSP Global is made up of 4 large businesses in the optical industry.
That do what?
So the first that you mentioned, VSP Vision Care, we're the largest eye care insurer in the industry. We have 1 in 6 Americans are covered. So 59 million Americans are covered by VSP Vision Care insurance.
Wow.
30,000 doctors in our doctor network that service these almost 60 million lives. And then our 2,000 employees, the majority of our 2,000 employees here in Sacramento do work in that vision care line of business. The other 2 lines of business that are headquartered here are first, Eyefinity. Eyefinity is our software business. So a lot of people aren't aware that VSP Global is in the software business.
Well, software in terms of like technology?
Yes. So we sell software to ophthalmologists, optometrists, opticians in the areas of practice management and electronic medical records. So we're actually the largest provider of that type of software in the optical industry.
Really?
Then the third business housed here in Sacramento is our VSP Optics. And what the optics business is that's really a manufacturing business. When you go to your eye doctor, you'll pick an eyeglass frame, which comes from one of our, and I'll talk about our 4th line of business in a second, which is one of the major providers of frames. But the lenses are cut by other businesses called labs or laboratories in the optical industry. So VSP Global has 9 wholly owned labs. We also have a very tightly knit 300 private optical lab businesses that work together with us to service, again, our 60 million members. And that's run out of our VSP Optics business here in Sacramento. The 4th business is a company called Marchand that was acquired by VSP back in 2008, and they're an eyeglass frame company. That's actually where I started my career in the optical industry back in 1999, working for Marchand back in New York. And then when they were acquired, Rob Lynch asked me to move out to Sacramento, and at that point I ran the Eyefinity business for a while. But the Marchand frame business is one of the largest frame manufacturers and suppliers in the world. They manufacture the eyewear for Calvin Klein, Nike, Fendi.
Really? So Fendi frames are VSP frames?
They're designed and manufactured by VSP, by Marchand, and the design is, they get overseen by people at Fendi or at Michael Kors or at Nike, but our team is the one that does the design and the manufacturer.
I just have to ask you this question.
Sure.
Do you guys ever work with any of these celebrity folks that these brands are named after?
Oh, absolutely. So most recently, actually, for me, loving sports, one of the recent groups that we worked with was at Nike. We had Misty May, trainer, and her partner, who had just won the gold, were wearing one of the Nike design frames that were done by the Marchand team, and they were involved in some events that Marchand was running. So it really is. It's kind of fun. We also do the Sean John line as well. So Sean Combs has done some videos for Marchand, and
VSP is in business with P. Diddy.
Yes, yes, we are. No one would know that. No one would know that. So that's a real fun part of our business, because it's fashion and it's exciting. And where Our design center is headquartered back in New York. It's right off of Bryant Park. I was actually just there yesterday. So they can get a call from the Calvin Klein company or the Michael Kors company, take the elevator down, walk across the park, and they're in the Michael Kors offices having a discussion with them about September's runway show. So it's really it's a really cool location, and it's really dedicated to the fashion industry.
Wow. So, okay, that's pretty heady stuff. How did VSP get started?
So VSP was started 58 years ago by a group of optometrists here in California who were looking at the Blue Crosses and Blue Shields of the world popping up and realizing that those insurance companies were driving patients into the practices of private practice doctors. So the optometrist said, we need, these guys were really, really forward thinking. You know, think about 58 years ago. Their view was, we need something like that, and they created the VSP concept at that point. So VSP, especially the VSP Vision Care business, has been part of the Sacramento region for almost 60 years now. So it was the vision of these optometrists back then to say, if we have our own vision insurance that's focused on getting people into our offices so that they receive a good comprehensive eye exam. And one of the important parts of an eye exam is that, and this is something people don't realize, you can discover health conditions like high blood pressure, diabetes, other very serious conditions early in the cycle just by looking in your eyes.
Really?
So an eye doctor can get you into the healthcare continuum and start getting your treatment plan done. And people are twice as likely to go see their eye doctor every year than their private practice doctor because it's less invasive, and there's the fun part, the fashion part of going to buy some new eyewear. So they'll go in and they'll get their eyes checked. And a lot of times the doctors will find these early signs of diabetes, get the people into the healthcare continuum and start getting treated. What we've seen, an independent study was done that showed for companies that for every dollar they spend on vision care insurance, they end up saving $1.27 over a 2-year period in healthcare costs because of early detection.
Really?
So for me, I just think about the genius of these ODs almost 60 years ago, thinking about this and saying, we need to get people coming in and visiting us, getting their eyes examined, and getting, making sure they're getting the proper medical treatment. So it was really those visionaries that started the business.
You talk about things that can be discovered just through an eye exam.
Right.
That's interesting. I hadn't heard that before. I'm curious though, talking about, basic level health care, how is this healthcare reform, Obamacare as it's known, how's this going to affect your business?
Well, it's been a very, as obviously it's played out in the news almost every day, and then specifically for us here in Sacramento, a lot of people have followed our story of trying to get it included into these health exchanges. So for us, the challenge right now is standalone vision plans are not included in these public health exchanges for 1/1/14, when the first wave of people are going to be entering into that marketplace. Well, it goes all the way back 3 years ago, before President Obama signed the bill. The American Optometric Association, which is the group of that supports our ODs, they made a decision that it would be better for them and better for their business if standalone vision plans were excluded from this new health reform versus being included. Their thinking was that if they exclude standalone vision, they'll immediately get added to medical insurance panels, and their reimbursement rates and the like would go into.
Did it happen?
It did not happen.
I guess it was a mistake on their part.
Well, I think we're starting to see that. We're starting to understand it. We're continuing to work with them to figure out and make sure that we can support them and continuing to provide access for patients. When you really go back to the beginning and you look at why VSP was formed, it was formed to provide affordable access to eye care for the population of the United States. So these doctors, it's important for people to be going in and seeing these doctors, and the health exchange and the whole healthcare reform is about access. So we are, we're continuing to work. We are, we went through with the health exchange here in California. We received a lot of support. We received a lot of support from local government, both at the federal, state, and local areas to help us.
Let's talk about that for a second. You say you received a lot of support. It didn't seem like you were receiving a lot of support at first, though, because it was my understanding that the health exchange just kind of dismissed you guys at first.
Well, I think where they were coming from was because the state level exchanges were going from the model of the federal exchanges, and the federal exchanges had excluded standalone vision plans. They were just singing to that hymnal. They were saying, you know, they had been excluded, so we're just following the rules.
Yeah, but Jim, aren't you being a bit kind in that it's not like the state was really fighting for a headquarters company here? Because, I mean, honestly, for the state just to sort of passively accept what the feds bring down, they don't do that in air quality or a whole host of other areas. Right. Why would they just passively lay down on this one?
I think, you know, again, I'm not speaking for them, or and again, I think their tune changed, and they've come in line and have been very supportive of us. I think the issue for them is the complexity of this and the implementation of this healthcare exchange. You know, when you read the articles in the paper, they're doing a systems development project with Accenture that's, you know, that you're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on. That was my career. I grew up in the IT side, so I understand systems development projects. When you hear about one that's in the hundreds of millions, you understand that complexity. And I think, honestly, the way they were probably looking at it was, we need to, especially for our initial implementation, keep the scope as confined as we can. And I think that's what we're seeing now as well. We're still seeing kind of a narrowing of that scope so that they can get up whatever they need to get up by 1/1/14, so that healthcare reform can continue moving forward.
And that's fine, but I'll tell you, the other side of the coin is there are a number of people who use what happened with VSP in that process, and ultimately they did come around, but it was only after there was tremendous public pressure put on them. It was a case example of the fact that California does not come across as a place that advocates for its own companies.
Yeah, no, and you know, first, I want to thank you, and I want to thank the local business leaders that you helped pull together for us, and you know, advocate on our behalf, and talk to the exchange about the importance of VSP being and staying here in the community. I agree with you. Again, for me, I moved to California 5 years ago from New York. And when you look at the business community here in California, my concern is that we need to start learning from some of the states that are out there that were coming after us when we were going through our time with the exchange, and Rob made his public statement about, well, we need to get this fixed, or we'll start to listen to what these other governors are telling us. I think we need to learn, because we did have some really good meetings with the state of Ohio, where we have our Eastern Operations Center, the state of Texas, you know, where these governors.
What do they do different? What do they do different?
I think they're focused on business, on job creation, and job creation through tax advantages to companies that are building and growing businesses in their states. They always came to us with a plan. They had organizations that were hiring and training people, retraining the workforce for the new economy. And they were showing us to say, well, if you need 50 new call center folks, we have a program that people who have been laid off in our state have gone through, and then we can get them populated into your call center. It was very proactive, I would say, very pro-business on why we can help you be more effective and more profitable here in these states.
So I got a direct question for you.
Sure.
How many times has the state of California come to your headquarters and saw your CEO, Rob, and you, and said, what can we do for you?
Yeah, I think, well,
in the last 5 years.
In the last 5 years, for meetings, just for me specifically, I know I've been in at least one or two meetings.
One?
Yeah. So we are trying to send the message, and definitely Rob sends that message every time he gets a public forum to speak, and you were there the night you and him were both honored at the chamber, when he said, you know, we have a choice. We're at an inflection point here in California, and specifically in Sacramento. We can become Albany, we can become Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and choose that, and if that's the route we want to go,
and what does that mean? What does that mean?
To me, that means that's your classic state capital location that has mostly government, a little bit of education.
Sleepy.
Sleepy is a good word, very good word. Or you choose a dynamic state capital like an Austin, like a Columbus, Ohio, like a Denver, that are really trying to revive and rebuild around their state capitals. And, you know, I think, and Rob said it that night, I think that's the way we want to go. Sacramento, for me, right, you know, being a native New Yorker, and you get your friends first when you move to California, they all think that you're going to start surfing. And it's like they don't see a map that goes past the Hudson River, so they don't really say, well, no, Sacramento is more of like a Midwestern town. But then when you mention to people on the East Coast, well, in an hour and a half I can drive to Lake Tahoe, in an hour and a half I can drive to Napa, in an hour and 45 minutes I can be in San Francisco, all of a sudden their eyes light up and not realizing what's here. What we have around us and what we have to leverage as a community, you don't necessarily have that in some of these other state capitals. We need to be taking our location and the benefits of our location and then using it to be pro-business and drive business, and then choose the type of businesses we want to be in. You know, we love being here. We, you know, like I said, we've been here in this community for 60 years. We have a huge workforce, 2,000 people that live here, that love living here, and we want to be a part of this community. But we want to see it. We want to see the business move forward. We want to see the business community move forward, and we want to be a part of it.
Let's start at the state level. We'll
Sure.
come down to the region itself, but let's start at the state level. What are 2 or 3 things in terms of types of programs that you saw from Ohio and Texas and some of these other states? I mean, I heard that Rick Perry offered to send a jet for you all. But what 2 or 3 things could we do, not only to attract new businesses to California, but to keep and grow what we've got here already?
So for us, right, critical is we need to be able to hire and retain top talent, and we need pools of resources that have science, technology, engineering, and math backgrounds. I was at a fundraiser for the Aerospace Museum, and they were talking about their program that's focused on STEM, you know, science, technology, engineering, and math. I think California is the ideal state with Silicon Valley, with, you know, its history in the space program. You know, we should be thought of as the science, technology, education, and math capital of the country. So getting behind that, keeping the people that we train, and this is talking about getting back to the age of our students. When we first met, when our sons were in middle school, that's where we have to get kids interested in science and technology, not high school, not college, back then, so they can start to build the skills. I think California is so well positioned for that. Then once you move from that level on the education, then it's taking the workforce and putting the workforce through targeted training based on what companies are looking for. You know, we've obviously, through the rough economy of the last few years, a lot of people have lost their jobs, but getting an understanding of companies, whether it's here in Sacramento or throughout the state, what are the types of people they're trying to hire? Are there training and programs that the state could help fund and put in place to then develop those people, so that's our source of resources in the company? I think it's all about education. It's all about, in the end, any company. It's about the people that are there, the people that are working, that are driving the business. And we as a state need to focus on, I think, that education, and then education of both students and workers to then drive into the new economy. That's the other thing, is understanding what that new economy is.
It's interesting that that's what you focus on first. Others might focus on regulations and talk about, oh, this is an awful regulatory climate and oppressive, and
Right.
my costs in Texas would be less than here, all that. But you're really focused on just the basics of education. So if you had to make a choice between regulatory reform and education, and you had to make the hard choice, would it be education?
Education. I think, you know, obviously tough regulations and all we have to look at, but to me, education is at the core. For, you know, for any successful person, any person that's having a good career, it all goes back to that education that they received, probably all the way back to kindergarten and forward. We need to get back and get focused on that. And, you know, California is a great state to live in. There's no question. It's got to be, and again, as a native New Yorker, I'm going to say it's the most beautiful state in the union. There's not a place you can live where you drive for an hour and you're skiing, and an hour later you're at the beach, that kind of thing. We need to leverage that a little more. I think sometimes we get an attitude. One other time, my wife and I lived in California before we had kids, actually in San Diego for a few years. And I remember meeting someone when we first moved there, and they said, "Oh, well, you'll meet a lot of people making 6 figures." And I said, "Oh, really?" He said, "Yeah, you'll meet them at the airport." Because they were, they're flying to their jobs, or they're doing consulting other places. It's a great place to live, and sometimes and I remember them explaining to me, well, you won't make as much money in San Diego because there's the sunshine tax. We're going to get taxed because you get to live in this nice weather all the time. But I think we need to stop thinking of it as, oh, well, you're just lucky to live here, and you should be paying that fair share, as opposed to using it as a lever to say, come and live and work, and businesses should be, business should be knocking down our borders to come in. And your other point, like you said, if you made me choose, I would focus first on education. But we do have to look at that regulation. We do have to look at the taxation and say, we want businesses doing that. We want businesses knocking down the border to come in. Those are the things that businesses are going to make the decisions on. The companies that have left, that was, they made that choice
like Waste Connections.
Like Waste Connections. They could run a much more profitable operation by moving down to Texas and taking what the governor had to offer there.
That was a really sad circumstance.
The thing that was sad there is I think sometimes people took for granted or said, oh, well, Waste Connections, it's, 200 people. You know what? It was 200 very highly compensated, very important people in the community. There wasn't a charity event you attended in this town that, some of the biggest donors that night were Waste Connections folks.
No doubt of that. And, what's interesting about that is when you think about Waste Connections' presence that we've had until they left, it's surprising that there wasn't more of a fight to keep them here. And while their fight was, or their dispute was primarily with the state level, it was just a point of just sort of throwing up their hands. And so sometimes it's not all just hard business decisions, but it's also about personal decisions about, do you guys value me as a company within this state or within this region?
And the approach these other governors were using, whether it be Ohio or Texas, or when when they were reaching out to Rob, they were making you feel wanted. And people and companies like to feel wanted. And we're hopeful that some of the things that have happened, and specifically Waste Connections, have gotten us to wake up a little bit here and say, we don't want this to happen. We want this to be a thriving, the state to be thriving, and specifically for us that live here, we want Sacramento to be thriving, because if it's not, it's going to be hard to do that recruiting and retention of employees.
And so what is it we can do regionally? What is it that we can do better regionally that you think would make a difference in diversifying our economy? As you know, there's this whole effort called Next Economy that many of us are involved in to try and diversify away from reliance on government. But if there's some concrete things that can be done to send a signal to the business community, can you think of one or two?
I mean, again, I go back to the taxation and breaks that you see other states giving companies to bring them in and get them in and get them to get established and to put roots down. We're not giving anyone a benefit to do it. I haven't seen, and maybe I'm just not privy to some things that are being done, but I don't see us coaxing people to do it. I see some exciting things going on, like in the area of innovation and down at the Hacker Lab, and we can talk a little bit about that.
What is that?
So the Hacker Lab is a group down on I and 17th Street, started by 3 individuals. It's really the beginning of some of the terms being thrown around is like an information alley for the Sacramento region. So you have this facility that is made up of, there's an area for software development, and in the back there's an area that they refer to as a maker space, where there are people back there making all kinds of different products and ideas for the future.
What's VSP's involvement in this?
So we've rented some space down at the Hacker Lab, and we've kicked off we have our own innovation lab that we call the Shop. And the idea there is to get some thinkers off of our campus, get them in a setting like that, which is more of a startup.
Like a skunk works.
Correct.
Yeah.
What are these people working on? Are there things they're doing that we could leverage? I mean, I went down to their 1-year anniversary, and they had guys do 5-minute pitches. I met one guy from that 5-minute pitch. He's already been into VSP, and we're talking to him about doing some business together around an idea he had for a loyalty program that we hadn't thought of.
Wow.
It's being in that kind of a energetic environment. So I see that, and I say, to me, that's one of the greatest things I've seen in in the last few years as far as us really thinking about innovation and being an innovative city. So we need to do more of that. Our plan is to stay VSP, as like you said, as one of the largest employers here. We're actually the largest company in Sacramento with our global headquarters here. Obviously, Intel's bigger and HP's bigger, but we have our global headquarters here, and our view is that we need to be a part of things like what's going on at the Hacker Lab and as much innovation as we possibly can, because that's what's going to attract the talent. And if you ever get a chance to go down and tour there, it's exciting. It's infectious to be around these people. They run these hackathons where over
a hackathon
over a 2-day period. So they start Friday night. They work through the weekend, Sunday evening. They then present the products that they've come up with to local business people and see if they're willing to invest or fund. It is, for us with 16 or 17-year-old sons, right? One guy was down there building an alarm clock that the only way you could turn the alarm clock off was for the kid to actually play a game with the clock. Otherwise, it just kept getting louder. So
I could use a product like that for my own kids.
Me too. So it's just an excitement that sometimes you don't feel when you're in other places, and it's an energy that's feeding off others. Other people that are not a part of your company and that may be looking at it differently. And you explain, oh, this is what VSP Global is, and we have these 4 businesses, and then they'll say something like, well, have you ever thought of this? So, no, we haven't, because we've been so embedded in our businesses. So that to me, for me, from an excitement perspective, that's been one of the most exciting things I've been involved in the last couple of years is working with the folks down at the Hacker Lab.
All right. Well, Jim, we're going to have to leave it there.
Okay.
But much appreciate your time, and best of luck to VSP.
Thanks so much, Scott. Thanks for having us, and it was a lot of fun.
All right. Well, that's our show. Thanks to Jim McGran for being our guest, and thanks to you for watching. For Studio Sacramento, I'm Scott Syfax. See you next time right here on KVIE.
At Five Star Bank, community is at the heart of what we do. Every day we strive to have thoughtful solutions for our customers and help our communities prosper. Honest dialogue about the issues affecting the region is vitally important to that prosperity. We are proud to be part of the conversation and hope you'll join in.
All episodes of Studio Sacramento, along with other KVIE programs, are available to watch online at kvie.org/video.